Easy E, how are we?
Shawnee, I am back in the sandbox.
Back in the sandbox and back training.
Ah, I tell you what, I filled up on pork sausages and pudding and cream cakes, cola zeros, and everything else in between. All my good work for 4 weeks was definitely gone. The one thing about going home, everyone wants to meet you for food.
Yep,
Everyone.
absolutely.
And I'm
That's
not
us.
one to say no to food.
You're paying for experience in restaurants, stuff like that. Like I imagine you like food. Yeah, sure, why not? Food. Yeah, sure, why not? Food. Yeah, sure, why not? Then a lot,
Oh
lot
man.
added up.
I tell you what though, smoked cotton chips. I never thought I'd crave something as bad, but I was craving that. I did get a fright at the price of chips now.
I
That's a
warned
big
you about that.
change.
I
Yeah,
warned you about
I
that, and you
know,
didn't
I
believe me. You're like,
know, I
"Oh no,
didn't.
this place is this and this," and yeah, yeah. I did warn you,
No.
but what a great way to start a health and fitness podcast episode with the price of smoked cotton chips.
That when people press play, they don't know what they're gonna get, Sean, and that's it. This is like
I don't
Forrest
know what we're
Gump's
gonna get
podcast.
because I was like, here, we'll talk about this and this for the intro. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what we'll do. And then you went on a tangent about Coke Zeros and stuff. They could probably like, Sean doesn't know what's going on. And it's true. I didn't know you were going with that.
Yeah, but I'm a person that I'm a gift that just keeps giving, Sean. And this week I have an even bigger gift.
You have a bigger gift.
Yes, we have a good guest, but more importantly, the guest himself is a gift for all those who have signed up to the Barcelona Marathon.
Oh, what do you mean by that? The
We
Barcelona
have a
Marathon is happening.
coach. So, all those who have signed up to Barcelona marathon trip with us, the big any given run day, get Eric's t shirt, get on a bus, do a PB marathon trip, will have access to Brandon Hargreaves, who is this week's coach on the Any Given Run Day podcast. Brandon himself has been a fantastic athlete from a young age, from junior world triathlon stage, of fourth place finisher. He's held national records. You'll hear Sean give him an intro of dreams, but that's what he's moved into the coaching game. His whole story is it's fascinating for the ups and downs in terms of sport and I suppose in the reality of when you of an athlete sport and his transition into coaching now is a great one for us as he is offered up to help our guys go get PBs in Barcelona.
Yeah, I'm after listening to this episode, very open and honest about his training journey and the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs he's been through. Really like his approach to training, and people hear more about the podcast. But he also trains someone that we both know very well on.
Yeah, Rachael Smyth. Rachael was our co-host for a little while till she started getting really successful at sport, and then she left us. No, I'm only joking, Rachael. If you're listening, we love you. But no, Rachael is always a big support to the podcast and has had a lot of success. You've seen our posts about the Ironman win in Cairns over the last couple of weeks was phenomenal. Her back-to-back victories in the Bustleton 100 and her now preparation for the World Championships in November for the 70.3 Ironman. Rachael has grown into the sport since 2019, 2020, 2021 even. She only really tasted cycling and swimming over those years and then tried out her first race only a couple of years ago and has had Brandon guiding her all the way through all of the different training and learning, I suppose, how to manage as a coach and as a couple. And Rachael, if you don't know who she is, do go back and have a listen to our previous episodes with Rachael, and it'll give you an insight into how far she's come in the world of triathlon.
And even if you listen back to those old episodes, where she was then was very impressive. And she's gone well beyond that right now as she trains up towards December for the Ironman. But forget about December right now. It's about right now in this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. Your guest is, for a lot of people listening, their marathon coach for Barcelona in Paddy's Day in 2025. It's Brandon Hargreaves on the Any Given Run Day podcast. Let's go. So this week on the Any Given Run Day podcast, we have a former junior triathlete who represented Australia, as well as representing Ireland at the under-23 level in cross-country and track and field, becoming the 2016 Irish national 10,000 metre champion. With a 13:58 5K and a 29:15 10K to his resume, he now turns his attention to his own multi-sport coaching business, the Endurance Mode. Brandon Hargreaves, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day. How are you getting on?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. How are we going?
The
So
problem
was it
with
better to
doing
represent? No, hold on, Sean. Was it better to represent Ireland or Australia?
I'd, I'd
3,000
probably say
listeners in
Ireland.
Ireland. Yes, Brandon.
the hometown audience, it's a factor. The problem with reading a bio like that, you kind of gloss over, and I want to get into it now. A 13:58 5K. Holy
Mm.
shit. Where do people go wrong in when they hear something like that and how it takes to get a sub 14-minute 5K? Like, to me, that like where do people get wrong in the training and your approach to get towards that kind of time to get a 5K, which is as insanely fast as that?
Well, probably first off, it's a lot of years and years and years of training. It doesn't happen overnight. I like to say nowadays that I'd probably run faster with the technology that they have on their feet now. I'd probably be a lot quicker now. But yeah, it was just years and years of, going through the cycles of winter and then a track season of just, putting the layers on top of the layers. But, you think of it when I was running those times, like I was getting lapped in races by, fellow under 23 and fellow junior athletes. So it's tough. It may seem fast, but it's not.
So times like that, obviously years and years and years, but obviously athletics has been a big part of your growing up. But sport in general is a big part of your life, from sailing to running to triathlon. Where did it all start for you?
Probably at school. It gave me an identity. I wasn't very academic, so the sports side of things was something that I could, gave me an identity. People kind of knew who you were. In WA, where I'm born in Western Australia, it's quite a small, I'd probably say small community, so everyone knows everyone. So that's kind of where it started from me. And then I just went into, like every Australian kid plays a particular sport, whether it's tennis or, cricket or rugby or Aussie rules football is a big one over here. So you pretty much are always playing sport. And from there, it just led into triathlon. I was swimming at school. I'd ride my bike on the weekends just with mates, knocking around. And then I was running, to keep fit for football, and thought, I could probably do this. So.
And what led to you move to Ireland? Did you realize that, people are lapping Australia? It's a bit easier over here to go for the 5Ks and stuff. How did that come about?
3,000 listeners in Ireland, Brandon. Be very careful.
Yeah. Probably my father is born in Ireland, so I've always had that connection there, and I've had the Irish passport. And I think at that time I was a little bit frustrated with where I got to in the sport of triathlon. I'd got to World Juniors and had come fourth, and felt a little bit angry and disillusioned at the sport because I missed out on opportunities. So I thought, it was good to get over to Ireland and have a change of scenery, I suppose, and start from fresh. And, living in Australia, we have to travel to do anything, whether it's sporting events or, for work. So being based in Europe and competing on the European circuit it's the best thing in the world. So.
And in terms of obviously taking that chance of going to Ireland, obviously that was for university. We're talking 10, maybe 12 years ago. What was it like in triathlon then? Were you shocked at standard? Were you shocked that the schools hadn't got swimming pools? Were you shocked that winter was winter?
Yeah, I remember my partner Rachael Smyth went to university at Maynooth, and I remember I think she was injured at the particular time, and she was doing water running or swimming. I think her coach at the time had her doing water running or swimming, and I just remember looking at the pool and being like, "Wow!" Like no lane ropes, like nothing. There was like people in there doing water aerobics, and someone in there, literally doing their recovery. I was quite shocked with it, especially coming from Australia where we have 50-meter pools within every 5-kilometer radius. So that was a bit of a shock.
And in terms of the triathlon scene then as well, obviously it's a big difference in terms of facilities, but how did you find it settling into university? Did you find the sport helped?
Yeah, for sure. Made it a lot easier as far as contacts are concerned. And, obviously a foreign person in a foreign country, it took me a bit of time to find my feet. But, I had a bit of help from my coach at the time. When I got to Ireland, Chris Jones, who was at the time the high performance director of Ireland, he'd coached triathletes in the past. So he was head of British Triathlon when the Brownlee brothers were involved. So there was a contact that I had there that helped, and he certainly took me under his wing and made life a little bit easier for me at the time.
When did the transition happen then from triathlons into cross country and track and field and that kind of thing? Was that just went to a race one day and did you feel like you got into that more, or were you doing triathlon stuff along with this at the same time?
No, it would have been 2012. I quit altogether and kind of got a bit lost. I didn't know what I'd wanted to do at that stage. You go from doing something, your whole life. I'd put a lot of personal things on hold to chase my dreams of being, a triathlete. So it would have been 2012. I quit, and then probably for 1 or 2 years, I just did some local distance running events in Australia, and then made the move over to Ireland in 2014.
So what is it that you think, obviously you've been quite a successful junior athlete, just missed out on a medal in the Worlds. What do you think causes athletes to fall off? I know your case is probably going different, but is it just that you've done so much of it that you just haven't got that medal to keep you going, or that incentive, or is it just fatigue of doing it day in, day out, and you just want something different?
I think you get to a certain level where I lost the love for it. I'm not doing it for the right reasons anymore, especially at that level where you're almost like in a fishbowl. It's ruthless, and federations, and they want results, and if you're not getting results, the next generation's coming through and is going to take your place. So I felt like I'd given everything at the time that I could. It's quite doing 3 sports is quite a financial burden on your family, traveling the world and, not getting the results that I probably thought I was deserved of or wanted. Yeah, it just made me a little bit disillusioned. And I go back to it now and I say to my athletes now that I coach, I'm like, the number one thing is to enjoy it, because you get the longevity out of the sport or sports. I at the time didn't see that because I was young, but as I've got older and probably matured a bit, but also have experience under my belt, if I could go back in time, I'd probably tell my younger self that.
Looking at your training programs and stuff you give your athletes now compared to what you're doing back then, I know things have progressed a lot in 20 years. Did you look at that now a bit, like how to make this, obviously you're at a high level, but to make it fun for your athletes a little bit more, or because I know Eric's talked before about doing Ironmans, that it's just grueling doing 3 sports, the amount of hours per day and per week you're putting into this thing. It just seems like with other sports, you've one discipline to get a high level all 3. When you're programming your athletes now, how has that training changed, or is it very similar to what got you such a high level when you were doing it?
No, I'd say I don't use the blueprint that I had. It was a much more of a kind of sprint-based program, because I was only doing sprint distances at the time as a junior, whereas a lot more, predominantly the athletes I coach will be, from the sprint up to the Ironman. So there's variation there. Not everyone is built the same, and not everyone has the same foundation going into a sport like triathlon. So you have to tailor programs, to people's needs, their everyday lifestyles. It's much more of a kind of personal basis as well, as far as what they can, what time they've got and how efficient they can be with that time.
And I suppose that's probably one of the things you've gotten a big appreciation for is time management. You took a break away. You were living in Ireland, the European circuit. When you in 2016, the Irish national 10,000 meter champion, did you get a little bit of a feeling of success again in your sporting career at that point?
No, it was probably unfortunately, and there's probably, I'm not, athletes that I trained with or coaches that I was involved with at the time that hopefully will be listening to this. It was probably one of the lowest points in my life from 2016 to 2018. I was running on literally one foot. I had quite a bad Achilles injury and was just probably trying to hold on to hope that that ideally it would go away or that it would get better over time, but it just got progressively worse. And so I look back on that, like now, I'm like, yeah, I'm super proud that I got a national championship on the track, and it's probably one of my most fond memories of running in Ireland. But outside of sport and outside of distance running, I was quite, like probably a low point in my life. I didn't really have a job, and I was just trying to run every day and live out my dream of going to the Olympics. But yeah, that dream was slipping away.
So you have gone through 2 Achilles surgeries, and that was essentially game over for you at that point.
The first one, no. The first one, I went to see a gentleman in Sweden who's quite world renowned for tendon surgery. Sorry, I believe his name's Hakan Alfredsson. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong.
John can't spell it. It's all right.
Yeah,
it won't be in the show notes because I can't spell the thing.
So I went and saw him in his clinic, which is at his house up in Sweden. And at that time, that was just a micro tear through the tendon itself. So the rehab itself, coming back from that, was pretty straightforward. Strength and conditioning, making sure that you're doing the 1%ers correct before you even consider running again. But it took me a while to get back. And obviously at that stage, having that sustained period of time off, I did unfortunately put on a bit of weight, and then that weight's harder to shift when you get back running, and that load on the tendon is quite hard. But I'd probably say the most recent one was which happened a year ago. That was kind of the writing on the wall.
And that was a really good race you were in. I think you were in the lead at the time. Am I right, Brandon?
Yeah, I was hoping to get back. I'd signed up for a 70.3, Western Australian 70.3, and was hoping to get back in some reasonable shape, and was doing a bit of running here and there. Obviously didn't load too much onto the body because I couldn't do a huge amount anyway, and was just running it was a sprint triathlon, and I heard something go pop, and then tried to put some weight on it. And it just felt, I at the time I thought I'd snapped my ankle, because I just couldn't put any weight on it. And then, a trip to the hospital into emergency, and it was quite a bad outcome.
The Achilles came back to get you again. And I suppose we have a lot of people on who have had, quite a lot of successes with people who are not even comparing the times that you're running. They're happy with their 10K times or marathon times. It is quite frustrating through a career of the way you describe it, some great achievements, but kind of in the background, there's always been that doubt or the negativity or an injury that's been lurking. You then transitioned from there, you were bedbound for a little while and crutches bound. And that's when the coaching side of you really came into the fore.
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of time, unfortunately, to willow in my bed and figure out what I was going to do. At the time, I couldn't work. So I was laid off work for 6 months because I couldn't go anywhere. I was going around our apartment on a scooter. Couch to
Did you have a little figure of 8 course there as well, do races?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we live upstairs, so I couldn't even go downstairs or get fresh air, so it was, I often say like that period, it was probably it wasn't as hard as the 2016 to 2018 time, because I felt like I still had a bit of hope. If I could get back, I could get back to my best. But I remember when the orthopedic surgeon who administered my surgery said, he looked me in the eye and he says, "You can't do this again." As if to say, look, we can do this. I can, stitch this back up, but if you do this again, there's serious, health ramifications that you may face in your life. So I was kind of like, look, okay, I've let that dream go, and I just wanted to get back to the level I am now, where I am enjoying just going out, training with the athletes that I coach and friends. I swim a couple of days a week, I ride a couple of days a week, and I run a couple of days a week, and I'm happy with that. And if you'd said to me 2022, if I would be back doing that, then yeah, I would have
Taking our
told
hands
you.
off for that one.
Yeah.
How long did that transition take from, like, obviously you started at a young age in Australia and it's always been at a high level and pushing and pushing and pushing, to just going out for a couple of runs and cycles, like, and knowing you're not going to hit those times you had before. Is that gone now in terms of like you're looking to your athletes and stuff, or do you still sometimes, does that urge ever come back to you when you're just running with them going, maybe a little sprint here or there? Or is it just after going through especially that second surgery, you're like, nah, not even worth it going back in that scooter around the apartment again?
Yeah, I'd say probably the latter. Yeah, I mean, my ego is well and truly gone. Yeah, I mean, I can't even keep up with the athletes that I coach anymore. It's just, every day I eat humble pie, and I'm quite happy to eat it. I mean, I love pie, so I'm quite happy to eat it.
Yeah. All
And
you could do was eat pie for those 6 months.
right, so yeah, and I look at it now from when I was a junior and seeing how enthusiastic and proud my coaches were at that time of seeing, their athletes achieve something. And now it's like I'm on the other side of the fence, and like it's, like sometimes I can't help but like, feel for them when they don't have the good race, and then, feel proud for them when they do have a good race and everything is executed well, so
Do you
ride the
feel
roller
more,
coaster with them.
do you feel more nervous now going to their races because you can't actually participate yourself as opposed to being a starting line? Is it actually more nervous for you now?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, when I go to races with Rachael, I try and help her out in as much extent as I can with, the bike element and making sure that she's all prepared. So all she has to do is worry about and execute, the race to the best of her ability. But when she's out on the bike, I'm panicking that I hope she doesn't get a puncture because I'm going to cop it if she does, or or something that I may have done that that we can somewhat control. But yeah, it's way more enjoyable being out there than being on the other side of the fence. And I often tip my hat off to the families, and loved ones of the athletes out there, because it's you're on the edge of the seat. It's teeth and nail biting stuff.
So talking about families who have to witness atrocities, all of mine witnessed me do an Ironman without it. It was carnage. but part of the deal for me was I had to get a coach and I had to do it. It's only 16 weeks. Even the coach that was working with me at the time just laughed at me and said no. And I said yes. So I ended up getting some sort of a program that would get me to the start line with no expectation, because obviously 16 weeks isn't a very long time. Those who are taking on these kind of challenges and who are looking to get into coaching or are looking to make the first steps, how does someone take those first steps? Because we've talked about the foundational level. Some people who get into Ironman and triathlon don't have a footballing background, don't have a sporting background. They very much in later life or in their mid-20s, late 20s, 30s start to find sport, find endurance sports. How do people start?
I would probably say, look, for certainly find a club or find a group of people that you can train with. That helps, going out on the bike with, or going to a swimming pool with. That also helps. And then once you get comfortable on that element, finding a coach who can lay out a plan for you, and trust that coach's, ability in the fact that they're going to get you to that race day or to the start line, sorry, in the best possible shape that they can. And along the way, there's going to be, peaks and troughs. You might get injured. You might have, personal aspects that happen along the way. But I do think that coach needs to have a general understanding of that as well. And slow and steady wins a race. It's like I often say to her when Rachael went to the Ironman for the first time, like I've never done an Ironman and she'd never done an Ironman. So we were really going into uncharted waters. So it was more that we would just, take it slowly. And if not, I said to her, I was like, look, I'd rather have an athlete go into an event like, a 70.3 slightly underdone than overdone.
Yeah, it could have a massive effect if you're getting there fatigued, if you're getting there already cooked essentially, and you're just asking for the famous wall everyone talks about, or the big blow up that they're looking at.
And
How
that's
do
the
you
other thing.
manage that?
I would say as well is there's a lot of outside noise in what, you do before a race. You hear or you wait till you hit the 30K mark with the marathon and the Ironman. And it's like, everyone's different though. And even Rachel said when she was doing her marathon in the Ironman, she's like, I never felt like I hit the 30K mark. It just felt hard from the get-go. So I often say to people, I'm like, look, everyone is different, and your strengths might be another person's weakness, and their weaknesses might be your strengths. So race to the best of your ability and have realistic goals going into the race. Like it might be to finish the swim. And then once you finish the swim and you get on the bike, that's when your race starts. Or it might be, I'm going to go really fast in the swim and really fast on the bike. I'm going to be a bit more conservative on the run because I feel like I haven't done enough training or enough running to gain my confidence. So it's all about, bringing it back to what the athlete believes that they can do. And then as a coach, you just instill that confidence in them.
How much of it is mental? Like you talk about their like performance and building confidence, and even like when Eric mentioned hitting the wall, I thought about Dublin, and you're 35K in, you're heading up the back of UCD, you pass the Luke's Aid station, it's like beware the wall or something, like the wall comes in, you're like, oh, I'm hitting that wall now. It's like, no, you're just going uphill and your legs are tired after doing 35K. But people tell you, oh, that's when I hit the wall. For some reason, there was a sign. I was like, there was literally a sign there saying the wall, and you feel like you hit it where you truly hit it or not is another thing. How much of that in your training is mental?
Yeah, I'd say it's a lot, probably 80-20, 80% mental, 20% physical, especially in the endurance game. The mind can do what the body's willing, right? So, I often say, or within a training program, I'll get my athletes, running, if not the time on their feet or somewhere close to the distance. So that, let's say, for instance, they're doing the marathon, we'll probably do a 30K or 20 mile or a 30K run. So they know that they can get to that distance. So once they get to there, it's like the last 10Ks, it's going to hurt everyone. It hurts the best in the world. They may look like they're fresh, but they're hurting as well. And once you get to that, past that barrier, it's literally for everyone, it's just survival mode. You just lock in, grit your teeth, and get to the finishing line as quick as you can.
I think that's a great note for people that are training for Dublin this year, in that, like, you hear people do 3 hour marathons, like, they're grand doing that. Whereas I'm hurting because my first one. It's like, no, they are hurting every step of the way. And everyone feels the same pain that last 5 10K. A marathon is a marathon. Yeah,
it is. I mean, the hardest thing is you're looking at on TV and you're seeing, the guys who are running the 2 hour marathon, and you go like, that's phenomenal. Yeah, it is phenomenal, but they are hurting doing it. They may look like they're comfortable, but they are hurting, so.
And given the pace that they're at, they're hurting from the halfway point. They're although it's a lot quicker, halfway is in an hour, they're hurting. Yeah. They're just holding on for that hour.
And that's right. So everyone's relative. To matter, regardless of what pace they're running, it's like, everyone is relative to the training and to the goal that they have. That's why if everyone would, it's easy to say if everyone could run a marathon, they would do it, because it's not easy, right? You've got to do the training, and it takes a lot of hard work. And that's why you see, like, I remember when I went to the Dublin Marathon in 2018, I think Rachel's father was running, and just being at the finishing line and just seeing these people come, running down the finish street, and just how emotional they are. Like, you as a spectator, you're just getting emotional for them, because you know what's gone into it, and you know how hard it is and the sacrifices that they've made for, all the stars to align on that day.
A lot of people are going to listen to this, Brandon, and they're going to look for the cheat codes, the free training off Brandon for the Dublin Marathon. People are probably week 1 into training, or week 5, depending if they're doing a 20-week or a 16-week, depending on their fitness and their base. What are good things people can look at? Obviously, you're going to be coaching, and it's probably a good time to say our marathon trip next year to Barcelona. You'll be one of the coaches that's going to be setting the plan. Luckily for anyone who signed up, anyone didn't, tough luck. But what's the starting point for these? What should they be looking for in a plan, or in a Garmin plan? Or, we've just bought our pair of shoes, we bought our expensive watch, and running is a cheap sport, they tell us. What's the best way to start without going nuts, and in order to be safe and be injury free?
Yeah, the main thing I would say, if you do have a running GPS watch, is to train off heart rate to start off with, and to not get too caught on duration. The main thing would be training to heart rate in the sense of like 1 being the easiest, 10 being the hardest. So rate perceived exertion, which is obviously RPE, I'd often say keep that to start off with in the 3 to the 5, that kind of ball range. So that might be, your heart rate might be anywhere from 140 to 160 beats per minute. And I would just, over a period of time as the weeks accumulate, go a little bit further at that heart rate. And then if you do find that you are maybe going a little bit too much, like, shin splints is quite common, or you're getting a little niggle, just peg it back a little bit. It's like 1 step forward, a couple steps back.
And a lot of people think that, and I know for me, it's happened this time, you do pick up a niggle or something. A lot of people will say, oh no, it's over. But in any endurance sport, it's peaks and troughs. There is a pickup, and there is even from a coaching perspective, there's mandatory slow parts.
Yep, for sure. It's part of it's part of the sport. Like, injuries do happen, and it often comes from, it can be from outside stresses as well, whether it's with work or whether it's with, a pre-existing injury. Like, for instance, I've an athlete that I coach he works, 8 hours a day on his feet, and then he goes and does a 2-hour run after work. And it's like, maybe let's just, your legs are tired. Yeah, they're tired. Okay, well, let's just maybe peg it back a bit, and be a little bit sensible. We've got time, and time is on our side. It's like, I think it's like the way that people want to get to the start line of a marathon is they want it to be all kind of like, on the upward spiral. And it rarely is it like that, even for the best. It's always ups and downs. You might get sick, you might get injured, but the main thing is not panicking, is trusting that, that you'll be good. And if you get to race day and you're a little bit underdone, I often say to my athletes again, hey, look, it's better to be underdone than overdone.
What's your thoughts? I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with Dublin Marathon, on tapering in the last couple of weeks leading up to it. Do you find it's different for each athlete you coach, or do you find it a sweet spot for 2 or 3 weeks out, or how do you find it?
It's very personal. I let them practice it in their, within a training. So let's say a warm-up race, I will get them to practice the taper that they are going to do, or what they think they should do going into a marathon. And if it works, then we say, right, let's stick to that. If it doesn't, then we try something else. But it's very personal. Some people like, quite a lot of intensity and the mileage to be cut down in the week leading up to it, or the 2 weeks leading up to a marathon. Others like, very minimal intensity and just like to go out and just do leisurely jogs, and just keep the motor ticking. But it's personal.
You mentioned warm-up races there. How many? I know it's personal, but do you reckon 2-3 warm-up races gradually building up distances towards a marathon every month, 2 months leading up into it, or do you have a strategy in mind?
No, I'm a huge fan of using races in preparation for your main event, because you can practice what you preach on those days, right? So you can practice your nutrition, you can practice what you're going to eat in the morning, you can practice what you're going to have for dinner the night before the race, so that when that main race comes, that those things that you've tried in a race prep before, that it works, so that you can just basically give the best chance that you've got of performing on the day. But yeah, I often find as well with races along the way in preparation to your main event, you train hard, so then you taper into that little bit into that race itself. You rest going into that race as well, and then you come out of it and you've almost gone to another fitness level. So it's taking to that another fitness level again, without overdoing it. Let's say in 15 weeks where you're just training.
Has Eric already got on to you for an idea for what he's going to do for Barcelona, or a training plan for Martin?
No.
Don't worry, Sean. I'm not revealing
he's talking a lot off air, and he's very confident on his time he's going to do for Barcelona. And obviously you're talking about it, and you're making sense, and you've got the endurance mode going on here. And I'm like, Eric got you in the podcast. I'm like, I see what's going on here now.
I'm not giving out.
I'm feeling the
my
pressure
secrets.
next March. I'm feeling the pressure, was what I'm trying to say here. That's
Sean,
all.
you're
That's
gonna
all I'm
get
saying.
If I arrive to that line in good nick, you're getting smoked. That's what I'm saying.
You keep staying in Doha with your 48 degrees and try and run a marathon over there, you prick.
Heat training is poor man's altitude.
And I am a poor man training in the heat, so it's definitely suiting me. Definitely suiting me. Brandon, I've seen a trick. I hope I'm not giving away a secret now. In the build up to a race Rachael was doing, you cut back on sugars and caffeines in the couple of days before.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Because a lot of people, when they hear carb loading, they get the Haribo, they get the cornflakes, they get the Cocoa Pops, and they have fun the night and the days before the marathon.
Yeah, for the Ironman, Rachael did consume a lot of carbs, simply just because of the duration. You know, like in an Ironman, she doesn't have to be, you know, it's not an out of the gun straight type of race. You know, she's got time to warm into it. So the fueling system works a bit differently in that retrospect. Whereas, you know, for the marathon, I tend to find that if you have a good meal the night before, let's say pasta and a protein, you know, that's the human body is designed to train on from a glycogen perspective on for about 2 to 3 hours, and then it starts to go into the fat stores. So, you know, and that's when the gels come into it as well. So by depleting the body in, let's say, the week leading up to a race of those, you know, those needs of sugar and carbs, it just means that in the days leading up to it, we can just basically fuel the body up straight away. So like 48 hours before a race, we can, you know, eat as much carbs as we can, you know, refuel the body. And, you know, because you tend to find when you eat a lot of carbs, you feel a bit bloated. And that can kind of make you in a race week feel a little bit like you've maybe lost a bit of fitness. So I tend to find if you just, you know, peg it back a little bit and eat in a normal, you know, because when you're training hard, you tend to eat a little bit more anyway. So when you're tapering, you essentially, you know, one, you're not training as much, so you're not going to eat as much, or you're not going to feel like you want to eat as much. So I tend to find just halving that intake is a little bit is better. And then in the days leading up to a race, like for instance, you know, climate also has a big deal with that as well. As far as if you're racing in a, you know, in a hot climate or a cold climate, you know, that has a big influence on what you eat as well. So in answer to your question on gels as well, it's just so that the individual gets the best reaction on race day. So they've gone from not having sugar for a week to all of a sudden having sugar. And, you know, your body's like, oh, wow, okay, I know what this is. It's the same as like when you don't have a coffee for a week and then you have a coffee and you're like, wow, this is, you know, this has hit me.
I got recently. It works. It works.
So Rachael would typically, you know, in a couple of days before a race, will just sip on a carb drink so that she's not having to worry too much about, oh, I've got to get my pasta or my potatoes in. She just would go to, you know, she's a school teacher, you know, during the day as well. So she just sips on that carb drink. And you know, we both know that gives her enough energy and for the race, it'll fill up her stores.
And again, that is trial and error. That is your trial races. That is your sprints, your Olympics, and starting to figure it out as you go up the gears.
Yep.
When I first, back a good couple of years ago, I was out on my own doing personal training, and the odd time my better half would come in, I put her through a session, and halfway through it, she'd want to kill me because she was convinced I was going harder and harder than I would anyone else. So fast forward a couple of years, I'm working in the gym and she wants to join. I say, you can come down to the same gym, but the other two coaches are coaching you for a month, because if I coach you straight away, you're going to kill me in front of everyone, because I do like semi-private personal training, so like 6-to-1 coaching. And after a month, when the others were just as hard as I was, she realized, oh, that's just someone coaching. When you're coaching Rachael, the first couple of times coaching Rachael and training into it, I will get into the juicy stuff now. How
Here we
hard
go.
was that? When you're like, I'm not for an easy run. I mean, like for like an interval session coming in, or you want her to get this, and this in the training, whatever it was. Was that hard to begin with?
How afraid of your fiance are you? That's what you just asked.
Thanks for summing up a 3-minute question to devil.
Yeah. What was the question again? No, I'm joking. I know the question. It was tough at the start. and I've learned a lot throughout the 2 years that she's been in the sport. And I have made, like I've probably shown my cards in situations where, I've probably let myself and her down in that sense, where I'm probably a little bit too passionate, and it's got probably to a stage where I've got to step back and look at it and be like, hold on a second, there's more to this than just her getting this result that we've both but it more so her worked so hard for. Just and as like the last year, I'd say we both worked really well with it. I'm not someone who says that, oh, you must do this, and this is the reasons why you must do it. I mean, because we live together, I see the moods that she's in, and all that, there's external noise that comes in as well from, as I said to you, she's a teacher by trade. So, she might come home from work one day and be really tired, and I go, look, okay, I had this plan, but let's do this, and that way she's happy that I'm not, forcing her to do something that she doesn't want to do. Whereas I'd probably say at the start it was, just because of the way that I'd been coached doesn't mean that, that's the way that I should coach, right? Everyone's different, and everyone, is going to respond differently. But with Rachael, it was a lot more personal. Yeah.
That personal touch has definitely worked, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in the race, the Western Australia triathlon, where she won back to back, and not only she win back to back, the second year it was something like 12 minutes or something faster. Am I wrong in that? It was a lot more, was it, Eric? But it was a big difference.
13 minutes.
It was a big difference, and she got faster. Training towards that the second time, because they say it's hard to get to the top, but it's harder to stay on top. How did you look at that and go, like, we like you won the race, so everything you did worked, but then to try and get that extra bit better is so hard to when someone starts out, and they get newbie gains and all the rest. Did you change the training in any which way because it was working, but then you're trying to get faster? How did you approach her training for something like that?
Yeah, we definitely approached the training differently. As I said, when she went to World Champs last year, I think my ambitions were probably not aligned with her ambitions, and we weren't on the same level in that retrospect. And I think when we we went on holiday after, and kind of had a good chat about things, and where she would like to go in the sport. And it's always been about the enjoyment and not feeling the pressure. And so we've in the last year, we've just tried to bring that element into the training. She trains, swims with friends in the morning, so that I try and make it as sociable as I can for her, so that she doesn't feel like a chore. And I'll go out for runs with her, or I'll go out for bike rides with her, just so she has company, and she knows that, along the way, for the longevity of the sport that she wants to be in, often you see people who enjoy it, they succeed more in the sport than someone who doesn't. Like, I'm a true example of that, right? I didn't enjoy the sport when I was young, and now all I want for, her especially, is that she starts the race with a smile on her face, and she finishes the race with a smile on her face. And whatever that result is, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because results take care of itself, right? So if she, say, for instance, like you used Bustle as an example, right? She swam, bike, and ran quicker, right? Which to be expected, because she trained, harder. She was, putting more time into it, and was a bit more disciplined with a few, like I like to call them the 1%ers. So you're looking after your recovery, your core, and your diet. But was there a magic ingredient? Did we do, anything differently to what we'd done the year before? Probably not. We just, up to a longer ride, did a few more intervals, up to a longer run, did a few more intervals, and just, for a period, because we do a lot of periodization with her training, over the summer here, she was swimming 20 to 25 Ks a week in the pool. But when we got into the race season, she cut that down a bit.
And for those who are wondering, and I suppose coaching is one thing, and people are like, oh, Rachael's a great athlete. Rachael only got into the sport, and that's one thing we always remind people in the last couple of years. It's only since about 2020, 2021 she got into this triathlon gig.
That's correct, yeah. 2022 or 3, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe she did a triathlon down in Cork or Kerry. I know they're not the same place, so that's why I said it.
Those few months in college did you no good here. No good.
And that was, I believe, her first Olympic distance race. And then not long after that, she relocated out to Australia. And I was in Melbourne at the time for work. And I remember her doing, some of the local triathlons there. And we even have a laugh about it now when, you're on your phone and a memory comes up 2 years ago, to this day. And it's, like her just, cycling around in the middle of the pack on her road bike, just loving life. And now it's like we look at it and just think of the progression that has happened. It's quite, I often look at it and I'm like, wow, like, she's achieved more than probably what she thought she could achieve in the sport. And that's awesome.
And do you put that to the coach or the athlete?
She could be in the room, Eric.
AKA, how afraid of your fiance are you? No, I'm only joking.
Well, I mean, look, she's had a running career as well. Before she got into triathlon, she was also an Irish distance runner who, same thing, went on a few under-23 European championships as well. So the running has been probably something that we both know we don't particularly need to work that hard on, but the swimming and the biking is something that we've really dedicated a lot of time to, and probably takes up the majority of her training program.
And will that continue straight up to... I was going to say, will that continue straight up onto New Zealand? New Zealand, when's that? November, December, the World Championships this year?
Yeah, December. I think it's 15th of December. Off the top of my head, I believe. Yeah.
So Rachael has gone and you have done the full Ironman distance. Is that for confidence or is that just to see how she goes? Now, obviously, Rachael qualified for the World Championships in September in the full Ironman because she won the race by 13 minutes to the next competitor. She was the overall age grouper female winner. Was that part of the plan?
No, it wasn't part of the plan. No. But we made the decision to enter the race. I think it was maybe over the Christmas break, I believe. But it was never, I mean, we, had the plan to just do 70.3s just because, she is quite new to the sport. So, it's like you don't want to jump off, the 50-meter platform. Maybe just jump off the 20 and then 30, then the 40, like work your way up.
Talking to the wrong people here, Brad.
Yeah. But
Sean can't even swim and he jumps off.
Yeah. She's gone from the 20 to the 50 and, thankfully she floated. But yeah, it was a case of, I believed that she could really, her training and the athlete that she is, her psychology and physiology, suits the Ironman athlete. She can go all day at a certain wattage, which is obviously a power output that you push on the bike. She can run a certain pace all day, which really suits that distance. And so we thought, what have you got to lose? And she enjoyed every moment, every moment of it. So there'll be another one in the horizon sometime.
And from your perspective, from a training output, how does that put her now looking at the World Championships in December for the 70.3? Is it confidence to know she can hold things that longer? Does that give her confidence for more pace, more power in certain areas in the 70.3?
Yeah, I definitely think that she has, built up or feels like she can probably empty the tank now, at that distance and at that time. And be a little bit more aggressive, say, for instance, on the bike and on the run, because she knows that she's probably not going to, blow a gasket. So from that aspect, yeah, but there's still a lot of stuff that we need to work on. Get her bike stronger because it's going to be a really tough course. This course is quite a challenging course in a sense where the swim is in a freshwater lake. So that'll be quite a disadvantage to a non-swimmer. And then the bike is kind of like, I would even use it as an example of, a hilly country road in Ireland somewhere. It's exposed, it's open, the roads are quite, well worn, and it's really going to come down to who can bike the strongest on the day and then hold on the run, I believe anyway.
Someone is. So go ahead, Eric.
Can you alter that? Obviously, you live in Western Australia. I've seen some of Rachel's Stravas. It's along a river, so obviously you're limited in what you can do. How can you replicate that, or how can you get her ready for that kind of experience?
Yeah, we don't live too far away. We probably live about an hour away from what we call the Perth Hills. Now, they're not hills in comparison to what you have in Ireland, but we like to call them a hill, probably like 400 meters elevation or something like that. But it'll be much of a case of going out there every weekend and spending 5 or 6 hours in the saddle, just going over that terrain, doing a few efforts. And then there'll be, we do a lot of training as well on a indoor trainer, which I do find, if you are tight for time, it is a massive tool where you can, really see huge improvements for the, because let's face it, cycling is quite a time-consuming discipline in the contrast of triathlon itself. So you can really do a 2-hour trainer ride with a few efforts and almost get the same benefit than doing a 4 or 5 hour hills ride. So we tend to do that a bit as well.
Someone that's listened to this podcast up to now has got a great insight into your coaching philosophies and how you do things. And you're obviously training Rachel to do the World Championships, and like that is pretty cool. I'd love to have a coach like that. How can they get in touch with you, and how can they get to learn more about the endurance mode?
You don't give Sean your email. He's not allowed to have it. Shut up, you.
Beating you in Barcelona. I'm beating you in Barcelona.
One thing I will say, and I suppose people do say I'm quite a humble guy. I don't know everything, and I don't have the answers. So I often say to the athletes who are looking to be coached or want input, I classify myself in a coach. I listen and I learn. So I don't have all the answers, and I certainly don't know everything, but I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to learn from other coaches and from other athletes. Like, I'm always looking for input. I'm looking for ways that Rachel can get faster, through, let's say, the technology and the equipment these days. And I'm always I'm reading, and I'm, talking to other athletes and to other coaches and trying to get better myself, because I don't know everything. And I think, coaches who probably think they do know everything, it's probably, you might, it might work for the athlete and it might not. But I'm always like, look, let's try, with the athlete, I'm like, let's try it and see if it works. If it works, then we both know that, the outcome is going to be good. But yeah, you guys, you can find me. So the Endurance Mode is the company, the coaching company. I'm on Instagram at The Endurance Mode. And if you have any queries or if you want to get in contact or anything like that, you can get in contact at info@theendurancemode.com. And yeah, just hit me up if you have any questions, or even if you just want any input or any knowledge about training or, racing in a particular climate or part of the world, I'm happy to help out.
It's brilliant. And not only that, then, as well, as we've said, Brandon will be coaching our marathon trip, where Sean has somehow turned it into a Sean versus Eric trip. But it's something we can look forward to, and those who have signed up can look forward to great insights from you, Brandon. And obviously a lot of people will gain a lot from that, and hopefully Barcelona will be a successful PB trip for everyone.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Looking forward to it, guys. And that is it for this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast with myself, Brandon, and Eric. Take care.
Thank you.
So how much to badly train, Sean?
I haven't even stopped the recording yet.